Hey Laughliners! Welcome back to LaughlineTV, your home for all things movies, comics, and epic geek news. And today we're talking about Survivor season-by-season rankings, from best to worst. Number 16 to 30. Number 16. Survivor, the Amazon. I originally loved the Amazon when it first aired because it was the first season where votes were crazy unpredictable from week to week. Plus, it was funny watching the guys brag how superior they were and then getting lit up by the women. However, it simply does not hold up very well on a rewatch. It is pretty painful how much of the season is based around dudes being horny AF. The edit basically shows all the men repeatedly salivating over Heidi, Jenna, and Shauna. And the producers clearly encouraged this horndoggery as much as possible, even in a high-stakes immunity challenge with questions like, who would you most like to see pose nude in a magazine? I also forgot how mediocre the challenges were, like the one where they had to walk around a fake Amazonian home, or the time they actually played a game of Go Fish. Not to say there aren't some things to still love here, including a batch of epic vote-off comments, a lot of unintended fire, Christie's evil stepsister's final words, Jeff Probst wearing sunglasses, and the most epic final vote delivery sequence ever. Number 17. Survivor, Caramon, fans versus favorites. A tale of two seasons this was, and I can already hear people yelling that I am putting it too high. But hear me out first before you rustle any feathers. If I was grading this solely on pre-merge episodes, this would be way down the list due to the emphasis on big personalities, Shamar, Brandon, Philip, as opposed to big gameplay. It was flat-out grading. But everything post-merge was spectacular. There were moves and counter-moves galore down the homestretch. The same way it is more important for a sports team to play well in the second half of a game as opposed to the first, a great season needs to build momentum, and Caramon definitely did that with 6 fantastic episodes in a row. It's much more important to finish strong than to start strong, so I definitely put more weight and emphasis on post-merge episodes when doing the rankings, and this season made a remarkable comeback. Also, don't overlook how great the bevy of water challenges was. Should I push it down in the rankings due to the lackluster reunion show that followed? Perhaps. Kind of not sure how much I should take that live show into consideration when ranking what happened out on the island. Number 18. Survivor, Samoa. I like this season a lot more than most people, but Russell's controlling of the game, especially post-merge when his side was down 8-4, was truly a work of art. Evil genius art. He was denied in the end, though, in the most controversial jury decision ever. Number 19. Survivor, Token Teens. Okay, you may roll your eyes at Coach 1.0, but imagine for a second this season without him. His unintentional comedy single-handedly lifts this into middle-of-the-pack territory for me. Seriously, other than Tyson getting blindsided, were there any super memorable moments that didn't involve the Dragon's Lair? However, the unlikely alliance between bookish northerner Fishbach and country boy JD certainly made for a compelling thread throughout the season. Number 20. Survivor 45. Let me say this first, this is the best produced season in the new era of Survivor. Yes, some of that is simply a function of the 90-minute runtime, which allowed the episodes to breathe and gave us more personal moments outside of game mechanics that allowed us to settle in with the players more than ever before. But it wasn't just the extra runtime. Producers presented the story in exciting new ways while also not cluttering the game with too many idols, advantages, bells, and whistles. Other creative flourishes, like the return of the new and improved auction, were home runs. And some of the editing techniques were flat-out brilliant. The Playing with the Boys montage was an all-time great, as was the Katura time-lapse while talking about all the ways in which Bruce annoyed her. The editors and producers really leaned into juxtaposition this season, and it worked. Survivor 45 also featured one of the most deliciously devastating blindsides ever in Kelly's ouster. Still, in my original penultimate episode rankings, this came in a few spots lower, for while season 45 had a solid cast with breakouts like Kelly, Emily, Caleb, and Dee, it didn't have a Carolyn or Yam Yam, 2 of the franchise's most popular players ever. But then the finale dropped, and when you add in that crazy final 5 vote, Dee's baller final tribal council move of revealing to Austin her big lie about Julie, and the epic roller coaster ride of Jake, who truly won the finale, if not the game, it turns Survivor 45 into the best of the new era seasons. At least for now. Number 21. Survivor 46. Survivor 46 was not a perfect season by any means. Obviously, if it was, it would be ranked a lot higher. While there were plenty of blindsides, there were few, if any, pick-your-jaw-up-off-the-floor shockers. If there was true next-level gameplay, it did not translate to the screen. And I know a lot of people really did not dig the Yanu-heavy pre-merge portion of the season, even if I did personally enjoy the absolute messiness of the Jelinxi, Jess, Banu trifecta. But Survivor 46 gave us something that has been sorely lacking in the new kinder, gentler era of the show. Some actual spice. Contestants actually started coming at each other again. Whether it was Tiffany and Q battling it out at Tribal Council, Liz having an absolute #Applebee's meltdown, or Venus creating havoc wherever she went. Confrontation is a good thing. It shows that people deeply care and are both engaged and enraged with the process, just the way we like it. And we needed that drama, seeing as how every single idol, so far, was never played and went out in someone's pocket, meaning the game never really got shaken up in a completely unexpected way. Probst also did his part, getting some of his bite back in interactions with the cast. Down the line, we may look back at Survivor 46 as an important franchise course correction, bringing back some of that old-school Survivor spice into a new-school game. Time will tell. Number 22. Survivor 44. You're going to notice a recurring theme in the rankings of new-era Survivor seasons, and that theme is stellar casting, perhaps no more so than here. Carolyn? An all-time great character. Yam Yam? One of the most delightfully funny narrators in the show's history. Franny and Matt? Arguably the most adorable showman's couple ever. Throw in Jamie, Danny, Matthew, and others and you have a lot of personality bursting through the screen. As far as the creative elements, I thought the birdcage idea was truly inspired and a good way to take a familiar concept, immunity idols, and apply it in a fun new way. The episodes also breathed well and did not get bogged down in too many advantages and idol hunts. There was also more diversity in post-merge challenges, which was a plus. So, with all that said, then why does Survivor 44 just miss the top 20? Unfortunately, we were deprived of all those fake idols getting played because players kept leaving the game with fakes in their pockets, socks, and bags. That's just bad luck. Just one or two fake idol plays would have been delicious, and I can only imagine how bummed producers were to see them constantly and consistently ushered out of the game. I know I was. And as steady and enjoyable as the season was, there were simply no jaw-dropping moves or moments along the way that stood out. Yam Yam turning on Carolyn at the final 6 could have been that. But it didn't happen and it wasn't. I have no big complaints about this season at all. It was a totally solid entry for the best reality TV franchise on the planet. Just not transcendent. Number 23. Survivor, Panama Exile Island. Just writing the word Panama gets me daydreaming about Survivor Sally and her intoxicating knee socks. Exile Island was a cool twist when it was first introduced, and I say that as someone that actually spent the night there. Eris and Terry battled so hard in every challenge, and while they clearly didn't like each other out there, the mutual respect was always evident, with Terry finally going out on a final challenge that may or may not have been completely fair. Shane Powers should have been brought back for Heroes vs. Villains. And the Second Chance season, for that matter. Or any season. Seriously, what the hell? Get that guy back on TV. But I still can't figure out how/why Bob Dog didn't get a bigger and better edit. That guy is an absolute gas, whether in or outside of Casa de Charmin. Number 24. Survivor 47. When I think about Survivor 47 a decade from now, what will probably come to mind first are all those emotional exits. Tears, anger, confusion, all in abundance. And it was wonderful to see, not just because there were blindsides, but because so many players were so emotionally invested in the game and outcome. The early and mid-game parade of tears and jeers out of Tribal Council truly felt like old-school Survivor. Emotions cooled after that, but Season 47 then gave us the signature moment of Operation Italy, followed by a stellar penultimate episode in which separating fact from fiction never appeared harder thanks to Genevieve's fake idol. We also bore witness to the almost unthinkable arc of Andy putting his absolutely disastrous start behind him to become a true chaotic force in the game. I could see some people naming this as their favorite New Era season. It's not quite there for me as it lacks the superstar gameplay of a D as well as the comedic brilliance of a Carolyn or Q. The decision to add an extra episode and therefore split the finale into 2 parts also backfired a bit dramatically in that Rachel's victory was almost guaranteed before the final installment even began. But it was a fun ride nonetheless. Number 25. Survivor 42. For most of the season, while it was airing, I went back and forth on whether to rank this above or below Survivor 41. The argument for ranking it lower would be the pure repetition factor. Because Survivor 42 followed the same format with all the exact same twists from Survivor 41. Prisoner's Dilemma, goofy phrases, hourglass twist, shot in the dark, do or die, along with many of the same challenges, the entire season often felt like a rerun. Anytime you have a perpetual been there, done that feeling, that's bad. Especially when most of those twists and challenges were not great to begin with. However, the producers did a much better job of editing and presenting that content. Unlike Season 41, which featured a few episodes that almost entirely revolved around twists, the producers put the focus back on the players themselves, showing them reacting to each other for a change, rather than reacting to a bevy of artificial objects and obstacles put in their way to disrupt the game. And while the hourglass twist is still the worst creative decision in the history of the game, Medallion of Power, it at least was marginally less terrible this time since players were informed that the person sent to exile would be given a power and the winners of the challenge would have the opportunity to send one of their own instead. Like Season 41, Survivor 42 had a stellar cast with folks such as Omar, Lindsay, Hai, Dree, Daniel, Tori, Mike, Jonathan, and others all creating a great story. But the best story of all was Marianne, and watching this delightful goofball evolve into a cutthroat champion was truly thrilling, lifting Survivor 42 into the mid-20s. Number 26. Survivor 48. By this point, you're probably noticing a lot of these new era seasons are all bunched together in the rankings, and I don't think that's an accident. Because with the lack of themes and changing locations, there is a definite sameness about them. And they also all generally follow the same basic structure: 3 tribes, some sort of fight for supplies, lots of journeys leading to extra votes and lost votes, etc. Even the boring numbered titles make it hard sometimes to tell them apart. That said, some of you also may be surprised to not find Season 48 at the very bottom, the new era pack. A poll I did after episode 11 had 68% of fans labeling it one of the worst new era seasons. Of course, that was before episode 12, which was considerably stronger. While I definitely agree with the complaints that there were too many episodes where nobody made moves and nothing happened, I did find many of the individual players and stories compelling. I, for one, enjoyed the chaos I brought pre-merge. Thomas and Star were insanely entertaining, Mary's successful shot in the dark play was epic, David had hilarious Chris Noble vibes at times. And I do believe the Eva and Joe challenge moment that made Jeff Probst cry was as emotionally impactful a scene as any we've ever seen on this show. That entire sequence was extraordinarily edited. Just a masterclass. Plus, if Kyle and Camila can actually carry their secret alliance all the way to the end, that is a flavor we have rarely ever tasted on this show. Yes, there were lulls to be sure. No question about it. And they were all the more noticeable because players kept talking about making moves and then not actually making them, which was super frustrating to watch. But hey, at least there was no hourglass. As always, this could move up or down depending on what happens on the finale. Number 27. Survivor 41. This may be the hardest Survivor season ever to rank. Let's get to the bad before the good. First off, it's a lot less fun to watch Tribal Council when you need a scorecard to keep track of who has 0 votes, who has 1 vote, and who has 2 votes to cast. As you can imagine, I hear from a lot of Survivor fans, and I have never had more people tell me how confused they were watching this show in those early episodes. That's not good. Speaking of advantages, do we even need to discuss the hourglass twist, which was more a lie than a twist and punished people for winning for no discernible reason whatsoever? That was the nadir of a first half of a season stretch that placed way too much emphasis on manufactured twists at the expense of showing us a naturally evolving social game develop. Which was a shame because when allowed to, this cast delivered in a huge way. Early boots like Brad and JD made for fantastic TV, and look at the exits from the fake merge to the finale. Sydney, Tiffany, Nasir, Evie, Sean, Liana, Danny. That's a hell of a lineup right there. And fortunately, a lot of the bells and whistles never came into play since people kept getting voted out with idols in their pockets or were unable to find idols and advantages that were hidden, literally, right underneath them. Not that I thought all the changes were bad. The goofy phrases players had to say to win an idol were super fun. I didn't mind the do or die since it was a level playing field twist in which everyone had the same opportunity to make a decision. And I actually really dug little flourishes like Probst sharing secrets with the audience before the players would walk into a challenge. It's just that the sheer volume of twists was overwhelming, which was too bad when we had an overwhelmingly good cast capable of carrying the action and intrigue on their own. Number 28. Survivor, Ghost Island. This was another hard season to rank. I generally really liked this cast, but I do feel all the early tribe swaps made it difficult for viewers to connect with many of them. I also really liked the Ghost Island concept, but felt there could have been more drama surrounding how someone was sent to GI and the games they played once they got there. Guess the Bamboo was about as riveting as watching an Adam Sandler movie as part of a South Pacific reward. My suggestion at the time was to have contestants have to win mini-challenges, like, say, solving a puzzle before all the sand poured out of a bottle rather than just picking right or left. This idea was used a few years later on Survivor South Africa, Immunity Island. And then there is the ending, which also has pluses and minuses. I still do not like the fire-making Final Four twist because it is an arbitrary out-of-format rules change specifically designed to get perceived better players to the end. But without it, we don't get that epic showdown between Dom and Wendell, which resulted in the first-ever tie vote for the $1 million, with third-place finisher Laurel breaking it for Wendell. So again, both good and bad. Like I said, a hard season to rank. But the ending was fantastic, and I was engaged throughout, even with the noted weaknesses. I liked watching Kellen act like a super spaz. I was fascinated with the Laurel and Donathan strategic push and pull. Wendell and Dominic were as great as we in the press thought they would be when we met them pregame, and that merge war between Dom and Chris Noble made for one of my favorite Survivor episodes ever. Throw that all together and you end up in the middle of the pack. Number 29. Survivor, Game Changers. What a weird season this was. On one hand, there was a bevy of huge, crazy tribal councils with last-second whispering and maneuvering leading to jaw-dropping exits. We were treated to two titans of the game, Tony and Sandra, going toe-to-toe. We saw one of the ugliest moments ever, Jeff Varner outing Zeke. Turn into a shining instructive example of how to handle insensitive bullying via the reactions from Zeke and his trimates. But something was missing. It's hard to put your finger right on it, but it felt like this season lacked a consistent flow. Instead of a gradually building arc, we were instead presented with what could be best described as a random series of events. Said events were all exciting, but they failed to form a cohesive unit. It didn't help that most of the big players and personalities went out so early. Tony, Malcolm, Sandra, JT, all gone before the merge. Then Ozzy went home in the merge double episode, and we hardly saw Siri until the merge because she never went to tribal council. That means we did not get a lot of bang for our buck when it came to the biggest players in the cast. That was always my big fear about this season. That as exciting as the early episodes were, those high-profile exits were diluting the cast and leaving us with players that we, as viewers, were not fully invested in. And despite the gameplay and unpredictability down the stretch, that is kind of what happened. And then there is what happened to Siri in the finale. Some may have loved the insane drama of having 5 out of 6 people immune due to idols and advantages, but I found watching someone be voted out, even when 0 votes were cast against her, to be a case of a season run amok by simply too many bells and whistles. The fact that it happened to a true legend in Siri made it even harder to swallow. And while I was prepared to drop the season ranking down a spot or two due to that tribal, it held steady at the end thanks to the new final tribal council format in which there was more of a conversation than regimented Q&A, which had grown predictable and stale over the years. That's a great example of natural show evolution that worked, and the producers deserve to be commended for it. Number 30. Survivor, South Pacific. Here's another one that I like more than most people, which is curious considering how much it has in common with the season that aired directly before it, which I didn't like, the same twist of 2 returning players, Redemption Island. The predictable vote-offs, no real water challenges, etc. But there is one thing I really did dig about this season, and that is the cast. I was invested in the players and their fates, the ones I wanted to do well and not so well. Plus, this season gave us 3 signature moments, Ozzy volunteering to go to Redemption, Cochran flipping, and Brandon giving away his immunity. Thanks for watching. Please like, comment, and subscribe. See you in the next one.